Welcome to the last breakout session of today. So you made it through the day. Congratulations. Nevertheless, we have one more session to go before the keynote. So here we are. And on this stage, we will talk about smart lockers. Please let me introduce you to Miha Jagodic. Sorry, I made it. Jagodic?
I can say she said it correctly behind the stage, so yeah.
So Miha, who is the co-founder and CEO of Bloq.it, a Portuguese smart locker company founded in 2019. And so we're talking about that company and that topic and how to scale, specifically, how to scale and establish out-of-home networks. Here you go.
Good. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone coming. I didn't know they're going to put me in such a competitive stage, so apparently I'm competing with the other stages around me, so I will see who will change the color on their headsets. Today, just to present myself very quickly, I'm Miha, I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at Bloq.it. We're the leading provider of smart locker networks. Some of the partners that we're known by are Vinted Go, DHL e-commerce, Poste Italiane, PPL, One Stop Box, and more. And what we do actually is we provide hardware, software, we deploy and maintain all of those lockers. So I'm not only going to talk about lockers or about Bloq.it today. What I'm going to talk about is how to what to be careful about when building out-of-home networks, which are gaining a lot of popularity. I've been in this industry for more than 5 years now. That's not a lot, but I've been looking at it very carefully. These are some of the topics that I want to cover today. So the growth of e-commerce, which is really something that incentivized me to enter this industry. I remember back then e-commerce was growing heavily, and I remember if the amount of parcels doubles from today to from 1 year to another, the same infrastructure cannot handle that, right? So something I'm also going to cover is a little bit what is the infrastructure that meets the demand of all of this growth of parcels, out-of-home networks and the complexity of it and how complexity is underestimated. I'm going to do that based on some of the good and the bad case studies that we've noticed, and just talk about what's next afterwards. So to refresh our minds just very quickly, why focus is out of home, I'm pretty sure a lot of you is already aware of it. So going over this very quickly, it's very important, very simple reason. It decreases the amount of stops. If you have out-of-home network consisting of PUDOs, lockers, instead of going to 100 different places to deliver 100 parcels, obviously you can deliver all of those 100 parcels in one spot. So with that, you can decrease the amount of, you can decrease the cost and be more time efficient. So one of the things also to consider these days is the environmental impact that this kind of network presents. Up to 60% you can reduce the CO2 emissions building an out-of-home network compared to the traditional home delivery. One of the important aspects, not so much for Europe yet, but in US it's getting almost notorious at this point. It's also the partial theft. There's more than 2 million parcels stolen, and out-of-home really provides you with a secure delivery method. Something we spoke about, delivery cost. More than half of the entire cost of the transportation is in the last mile. Therefore, last mile is something to be dealt with, right? Out-of-home is great, but it's not so easy to establish, and I want to point out here the complexity of scaling out-of-home networks. So why is it complex? It's complex because it's an ever-changing landscape. Some of the trends, from more obvious ones to the more trendier ones, one of them is obviously the growth of the internet users that are shopping online. 3/4 of it shopped online before. 70% of those actually are interacting with the C2C platform. So this is a very high growing trend. We see it firsthand with Vinted. And one interesting one is that 20% of them actually gets returned. So returns are becoming big. If you think about it, with a little bit of a bigger household, almost once a day if everyone orders, one order gets returned. And this already amounts to more than 600 billion a year in cost. Rapid delivery is on the rise, and one thing that is worth considering is the shipping cost is something that customers are very sensitive about, right? Sometimes it's almost bizarre how choosing a product online, if it costs $100 or $80, it almost doesn't matter. But if it has a $5 delivery cost, this can already change the opinion, right? So these are all things to consider when trying to make the transportation or the delivery method efficient. So how to establish the out-of-home? Two main points are obviously the PUDO and smart lockers. PUDO is the pick-up and drop-off store. So to scale the locker network, what's been proven so far is the mix is the best, but not both of them are equally efficient. So if we take a look at the pros and cons of both, PUDOs are very easy to establish. They're free. Typically, since they have a person there, give you a little bit of instant customer support, and the density is also one that is easy to get quite quickly. But still, there's a lot of benefits that Smart Locker bring compared to PUDO. So PUDO provides with a lot of human errors. The pickup is slower, especially when you have a high season of packages or some holidays. You can see big lines in PUDOs. Then PUDOs are not 24/7. They have a high churn and typically a lower capacity. And for those reasons, we see parcel lockers popping up this day much more. Currently, at this growth in Europe, there are 60 lockers open per 15 PUDOs. So you can really see the popularity of lockers overgrowing PUDOs. So I already covered a bit of it. So why smart lockers? It's becoming very convenient for both for business and customers. For customers, it's really convenient. That's something that I'm going to talk about a bit later. Once you get the necessary density of it, once the proximity of locker is less than 300 meters, it's convenient because it's 24/7. It's in a very fast pickup, and it allows you typically longer storage, although logistic companies don't really like it. On the other side, business from business perspective, it's a first attempt delivery. There's no failed deliveries with that, and it, as we said before, it amounts to a lot of cost saving as it's more efficient. So, according to reports, this is the growth and predicted growth of the parcel locker networks. Currently in Europe, according to reports, we have 120,000 lockers already. If you take into account those countries that are currently the most dense, and if you take into account the market's going to reach its peak somewhere between 2028 or 2030, I do believe it might go a little bit beyond 2030, but this is where there should be a ratio of 1 smart locker per 1,000 people, perhaps even more. But we already see this trend. If we take a look at some of the examples, Denmark, for example, it's one of the most locker-dense countries. They have more than 1 locker per 1,000 people already. The same, by the way, is with the Czech Republic. Then Finland is a country where out-of-home takes the biggest percentage of all of the deliveries, 90%. And Poland is the country with the most lockers in absolute numbers. And they have 1 locker per 2,000 people now. So we can really see it's on a rise. So maybe if I go to the previous slide, actually, to say that there's going to be 800,000 lockers in Europe, if they just match, if other European countries just match some of the numbers of the most dense countries today, it's not to say it's not going to happen, right? So what are some of the challenges of establishing a network? So one very important thing is to say it doesn't just stop with purchasing a locker, right? There's a lot of layers of complexity when it comes to locker networks. It really starts with the strategy and planning, but then also all more variable components of it, hardware, software, deployments, and maintenance. So especially something that's typically underestimated are some that are not as obvious, for example, deployments, which I will cover later. If we check, so trying to build all of these locker networks, we isolated some of the questions that are typically underestimated and not really answered before companies start building it. So the first one to start with is really what is the strategy to get your return on investment on the capex that you build there. Then another one is who do you need to integrate with for a good user experience to really tailor it to your user needs and the local needs. Who will do the integration? Typically the question that arises many times is that going to be an internal development? Is that going to be an external company? You would be surprised on how many levels this is not clearly defined typically. Then how do you ensure the network constantly running, both from software and the hardware perspective? Software needs to have tools in place to troubleshoot issues, make sure you're ahead of the game, but also to maintain it and make sure you have SLAs in place. And then the last one is really, are you aware of the total cost of ownership of your Locker network? I mentioned before the deployments. It seems like, okay, you need to deploy a Locker, but what's included is everything from just project management, planning and serving. Someone needs to go there before, see where you're going to place it, how it looks. And the next trip is basically site adaptation. It could be everything from electrifying or cementing, making sure the location is ready. Then installation and activation itself, and some of the things that are charged on all points is basically transportation and warehouse. So what we see on projects, typically 35% of the costs are underestimated. Even with the data we have today, with the Locker networks that have been built, it's still underestimated heavily. So what are some of the ways and strategies you can improve the efficiency of the Locker network? One that's very popular now is agnosticism, both on being hardware agnostic and carrier agnostic. What is hardware agnostic? This basically means that you keep yourself as flexible as possible. You don't want to have all the eggs in one basket, so you want to diversify, or you want to be diversified. You want to have a chance to adapt to many hardware solutions. This is something that we've seen very well with DHL e-commerce. We've done this before in Czech Republic with PPL. It's something we're launching now with Posta Italiana, where we're looking to do this with a few more countries, and we really see the benefit of being able to combine and to utilize all the infrastructure that's available, and also give an option that when there needs to be a change, you're able to adapt and you can combine and include the new infrastructure within the hardware set that you have. And then being carrier agnostic to improve the efficiency. One thing is to really expand the network. This is more to utilize the Locker itself. One trend that we see today is really building agnostic networks. This is to make sure the Locker is utilized as much as possible, typically allowing all the couriers and other players to integrate with it. So this, we're talking again about the flexibility that you need to offer to provide a good service. This is something we see Smart Mile doing in the past years, something that we see my Flexbox doing in Germany. Now also One Stop Box, where we're part of. So One Stop Box was created with a purpose to allow everyone who wants to deliver in the network, they're available for it. They will go even further. They want to partner also with retailers. So if they put it in a parking spot for a retailer, not just the all logistic companies are allowed to deliver there. They also allow the click and collect. So I think this is a futuristic model that I believe it will work in the future. Let's see. So I'm very, very proud of this project. Important thing, talking about the efficiency of the Locker network, real-time monitoring is something that we put a lot of importance on. Always staying ahead of the game, knowing what's going with the Locker. Something that we've developed is, we call it Bloq.it Vitals. It's a software system that kind of predicts the failure of the components in the future. So with predicting the failures, you can predict the maintenance needs, and if you know your maintenance needs ahead of time, you can really predict, you can really understand what's the total cost of ownership and really optimize it. So, and then another thing that gets problematic with a lot of density is picking your locations carefully. We've seen some reports within the satisfaction and some service satisfaction of users. So users are very happy if you actually provide them the sleeper's distance, which is something that everyone's talking about. So sleeper distance for them, I guess it's 100 meters. Satisfaction is over 80%, and I guess they're very happy to pick up from a Locker. If you take a look at the bigger range, up to 1 kilometer. Only every second one is satisfied, but it's still over 50%. After 1 kilometer, it's really hard to get users to be happy about picking up in a locker. So something to consider when deploying a locker. We've seen pilot projects being much more successful if lockers are being placed densely in a city than the same amount of lockers being spread across the entire country. So the density really means something. Talking more about locations. So when you start, it's very simple to pick locations. I've heard stuff like just place it where people live, right? It's not as simple though, especially when you have a higher density, but sometimes it is not as simple. And I chose here to present the situation of City of London, which is a neighborhood in London. I think they have maybe 10,000 inhabitants, but they have 1 million people commuting there, right? So you really kind of need to understand where the movement is, what's in people's way, where are they willing to pick it up. It's very important also to mix the network, indoor and outdoor lockers, so to combine both. Based on our project, we've seen that after a certain hour, typically in the afternoon, outdoor lockers get more popular. Sure, there's a little bit of the 24/7 component. Some stores are not open, but sometimes at the end of the day, there's traffic jams, and outdoor lockers are typically placed a little bit more on the outside of the cities. There's many reasons, but the best networks we've seen were always very mixed with an indoor and outdoor solutions. Some of the interesting insights we also have from our project with Vinted. Currently, we're deploying over 100 lockers a week. We've done 2,000 lockers last year. This year, we're looking to double the network. And some of the interesting things is what was also the customer's behavior. One is I was talking to them what are kind of the days that work best for the users, and they obviously said Sundays are the worst for pickups. But this is where people shop, and Mondays then are best for the pickup. So if you really want to optimize or understand the customer behavior, that's, I guess, interesting to know. One thing that Vinted did great, though, is they didn't just take the typical locker measures for granted. They analyze millions of their parcels and the sizes, and they decided to build a locker that really fits their needs perfectly. So you can see a locker being very small, a lot of small compartments. They're a second-hand fashion marketplace, so their parcels are very small. And they understood the scale and importance of detail when it comes to scale. So one thing that we worked was not just the configuration of a locker itself, but also how the entire locker looks like. So we developed a locker that basically, if you put two of them together, perfectly fits on Euro pallet. And I've said it before that transportation, due to that fact, is so optimized that it's now cheaper to transfer a locker from Portugal to France than send a letter. So if someone wants to send a letter from Portugal to France, you let us know and we're going to put a letter in the locker. It's going to get cheaper. So these kind of things really make a difference on the scale. So what's the future? According to my conversations I had with the industry players and what I was able to read, out of home is here to stay. Every country that implemented it heavily and did it correctly, based on some of the examples I mentioned, is just expanding, and the business satisfaction is growing, and the same is for customer satisfaction. I think door-to-door home deliveries will become a big premium and very expensive in the future. So if there's a takeaway I would say that I got from the research is the best out of home is a mix of all the solutions, and this is the way it's easier to scale: puros, social points, lockers, lockers being indoor, outdoor, and so on. Although lockers are the most efficient way by basically most of the metrics, and it's also at the high volume, the cheapest to operate. So to end this presentation, I would just invite everyone to pass by our stand, because today and tomorrow we also have something new to present. Locker's been around for a while. What we wanted to show here in this trade show is something that we believe it's next. That's why we called it the next. It's what we would like to see. It's a mix of a battery locker and traditional locker. It's autonomous locker solution that can be placed everywhere. It's off-grid, but it doesn't reduce any functionalities. That's why we like to say this is a locker with a no compromise. So very happy to present it to anyone that is passing by, and I hope you got some new information, new stats, and if not, I'm very happy to hear your opinions and to have a chat.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Miha. So let me just jump back to the beginning because I was curious about that. Why the hell are people underestimating the costs of this? I mean, if you have a proper project management and want to go into the sector, why do you think that is a common thing that people underestimate the costs?
It's a good question. I think there's just so much complexity. It's an infrastructure project, so it's very easy to just forget about it. I also think sometimes companies try to do it internally a little bit too much, thinking they will save costs. But if you go to external partner and you can't just dislike them because they tell you there are existing costs existing because it's going to happen anyway. So I really think it's just the complexity, and you need someone with an experience to kind of show you how to properly establish it.
Yeah, agree. So it's always important to find the right partner instead of trying it to do on your own if you don't have the experience in that field, right?
Well, yeah, I'm a little bit biased, but I haven't seen a lot of successful cases not trying it out with a partner. Yeah.
Okay. So before I go into the depths here, we have still some people in the audience. Anybody who has any questions right now? Perfect. Here in the front row. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andre V, and I'm from the Parcel Locker Central. And thank you for the presentation. Definitely, you and your company have the most informative know-how about parcel lockers and parcel delivery, especially in last mile. But I'm going to ask you about the future services, because lockers are not only the parcels. There are a variety of different services like dry cleaning, renting, whatever things can be automated. What are you thinking about those services, and what do you think whether this development is going to be heavily towards parcels, or the vertical services will sort of take over at least some share?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do think lockers will evolve to that point, actually. So once infrastructure is there, established and dense and very convenient, I think companies will be incentivized to include more and more services to those lockers. So yeah, what you mentioned, I think are going to be the use cases occurring out of it. We see one-stop box being very futuristic in that sense, and already starting a network out with an ambition to allow it for all the possible use cases. As a provider, what I do think is that we need to be open-minded for these future cases, and we need to keep our tech stacks flexible to adapt very quickly. In my mind, there's no doubt that lockers are going to be utilized for many more things than just receiving parcels.
That's a great point. And talking about the future and the expected growth that you've also mentioned in one of the slides before. So how are you preparing, or Bloq.it is preparing your infrastructure to scale this growing demand that you expect?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I got a little bit of a break.
Sorry. Okay. So how does Bloq.it prepare for this growth? And
right.
How do you, scale your infrastructure to meet that need that will come?
Right. So we're aware that lockers are under growth. I do believe in this analysis that there needs to be many, many more lockers placed all over Europe. What we do is we're just trying to make sure we hire the best team that is able to support the growth. So we're very forward-thinking. We don't, if I use a little bit of a cliche, we don't think so much about today than tomorrow. So we really are expanding the team to make sure we can work with all the future projects. Yeah.
So just to be a bit more precise, what are the next steps for Bloq.it? Are you planning any expansion? Like, we're curious.
Right.
Are you expecting to enter new countries?
So we're always looking at all the countries. We see some developing better than other. We're looking at expanding the portfolio of products for sure to assist a little bit of a bigger portion of a market. So One thing is having a rich product roadmap, and geographical opportunities are more limited. So we're looking more as what company we could work with, and a little bit less for now in what geography that could be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from the audience? And that's your last chance. Oh, here we go, the second row.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. My name is Marina, and I'm from Jew Marketplace. So, as you may know, first of all, I want to say that I truly share your vision that parcel lockers and PUDOs will be a future delivery standard. And as you may know, marketplaces are trying to cut the way of the user from the card to the payment. So we try not to give the opportunity to the consumers to choose the type of delivery. And my question to you is, do you think there are already those countries where the customer is expecting the parcel to be delivered into PUDO or locker, and some countries, or should we directly communicate this type of delivery to the buyers?
Sorry, to who?
To the buyers, customers, users.
Right. So your question is if the customers will prefer PUDOs and lockers versus delivery
I mean,
to
you
their
know,
own?
I believe that there are countries
Yeah.
where users already expect the parcel to be delivered into PUDO.
Right.
Is that right or not? And please share
Right.
your insights about what countries are those. And
Right.
second question is, do you think that we as marketplace, we need to directly communicate this type of delivery to the consumers for them to expect those items to be delivered to PUDO, not
Right.
to their doorstep?
Yeah. I think so. The most dense countries obviously are the Nordics. In Eastern Europe, we see Czech Republic, Poland working very well, and I see everywhere when the density is big enough, PUDOs and lockers almost become the preferable option, right? So those are the countries, and I definitely think that customers don't have an issue picking up there. You can see that proximity, right? The survey. If it's close to you, you almost prefer it than getting a delivery to home. So I think out of home is going to get everywhere. Just some countries are slower in the adoption of it. As a marketplace, so I don't really understand the model as of today that you have, but I think the entire market of lockers will somehow show customer that lockers or PUDOs or out of home for that purpose is the way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There is another one.
Hi, Paul Needham from CP Research. It's following on from that one a little bit, and it's bringing together the question of sustainability and pricing. We hear very often from locker companies who say deliveries to lockers are 30%, you just said 60% more sustainable.
Yeah, it's going to be 90 on the next ratio.
Leaving aside the question of how to measure that.
Sure.
But how do you see the potential for introducing some kind of differentiated pricing for a parcel delivery to a locker compared to a parcel delivery to home, in terms of the pricing for either to the retailer or the pricing to the final consumer? And how could that be marketed, let's say, realistically, transparently, believably?
I think these are two questions: how to incentivize people to actually be so environmentally cautious to actually use lockers, but one is also how to prove lockers are sustainable. So I do agree that with the low density, if you need to drive to a locker, then you do the mile, right? Even if the courier doesn't. But with a good density, these pickups actually happen on foot. So this is where the decrease of the CO2 emission happens with a bigger density. So how to incentivize them? I think it's not really on couriers, although I think they're very environmentally cautious. I think just all the surrounding and this notion that we need to protect the environment, it's kind of selling that, right? So I think at some point for couriers, it's just going to be an option. Out of home is going to be cheaper anyway, but maybe they can give them some kind of credit. So I think this really goes to the marketing guys to use their creativity, how to package this good cause in something that could be a little bit more playful for the final user. Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Which part not? I'm happy to answer more if something's unclear.
Okay, all right. Okay, in that case, what role can you as Bloq.it play to, let's say, to promote the sustainability of lockers, or just generally to promote the usage of lockers in your role with your business model?
So my number one priority is to make lockers as usable as possible. I think sustainability comes with it, right? Because with a bigger density, people walk to lockers, and this is where your reduction is. So my job is just to make sure that lockers are as user-friendly as possible. And then on the side of the couriers is to place them as many as possible. And yeah, basically like that. We do, for a fact, actually. We do like to do environmental initiatives with the partners and kind of show them that using lockers actually is very good. We just had with Vinted, actually. We were in Lithuania. We were planting 3,000 trees, actually. I spent the last weekend literally digging the dirt, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes, here in the back.
Hey Miha, thanks for the presentation. Just wondering if in the future you foresee people potentially being able to purchase part ownership of specific lockers, potentially in walking distance to their property. Is this something that maybe Bloq.it will roll out in the future? Yeah, it'd be great to know your thoughts on that.
Sorry, what do you mean by purchase? Like owning the locker or APM that's close to you?
Yeah, or even like a timeshare aspect of it. Where
To rent it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do think so. I'm very excited about the new business models that will appear of having a very well-established locker network. So that's one of them, and I think this one is already happening in some cases. I think I've seen in Estonia some locker compartments being available for a subscription. I'm not sure if this gives you the right that it's only yours, but it's a subscription versus per use. Yeah.
Interesting.
Lockers are interesting, yeah.
Yeah, they are. Any more questions? Last chance. Everyone's tired? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're closing it here. Thank you very much, Miha.
Sure.
And guys, step by their booth and let you show about the new developments. We're following now with the keynotes in a few minutes, and then the award ceremony. I hope to see you all there. And yeah, have a great day, and do not miss our reception tonight. Thank you.